In Activity 2, Why Forecast the Weather, students relate the usefulness of an accurate weather forecast to everyday life. They first discuss what weather forecasters look at to predict the weather, then discover the importance of accurate record keeping in formulating an accurate forecast, and finally add sections of data to the weather stations. You will need the following materials from the kit: Activity Sheet 2, pieces of construction paper, 23 centimeters by 30 centimeters, paper fasteners, and weather stations as assembled in Activity 1. You will also need to provide markers, metric rulers, and current weather reports. To prepare for the activity, make 2 copies of Activity Sheet 2 for each student. If you have not already done so, collect weather reports. Each team should have a report that includes current national and local weather and forecasts. Each team of 2 will also need a piece of construction paper, a marker, a metric ruler, 2 paper fasteners, and their weather station. To begin the activity, ask students, if you were to tell someone what the weather is like, what types of information would you give? Students may describe weather conditions by relating the temperature and telling if it is raining, snowing, windy, or cloudy outside. Next, ask students, what was the weather like yesterday? What is it like today? After a general consensus about the weather has been established, ask, what do you think the weather will be like tomorrow? What makes you think so? Accept all reasonable answers. Next, explain to students that meteorologists have found that weather often repeats its patterns, which means weather frequently can be predicted or forecasted. Ask, can you always accurately forecast the weather? You can't necessarily always accurately forecast the weather. Every forecast may prove wrong because so many variables create our weather. Next, ask what types of information do you think weather forecasters look at when making a prediction about the weather? Students may remember what types of weather information are given on television and radio broadcasts, such as whether it's raining, snowing, windy, or cloudy outside. Explain that in the upcoming activities, they will observe clouds and wind, measure and record temperature, precipitation, and air pressure, and learn to interpret weather map data. They will also look for patterns in these data and make predictions about upcoming weather conditions based on their observations, just as meteorologists do. Ask, why do you think it is important to forecast the weather? Encourage all reasonable answers. Explain that an accurate forecast is important because it can help students choose what clothes to wear, help their families plan for recreational activities, or perhaps prepare them for storms or natural disasters. Distribute 2 copies of Activity Sheet 2 to each student and 1 sheet of construction paper, a marker, a ruler, and 2 fasteners to each team. Next, recreate the chart from Activity Sheet 2 onto a sheet of construction paper, or make extra copies of the chart. Have teams retrieve their weather stations and write daily weather and observations on the upper part of the right-hand panel of their weather station. Use 2 fasteners to place the chart they created under this heading. Place today's weather report from the newspaper on top of yesterday's report on their weather station. Explain that students must record and track weather to be able to predict it. Tell them that meteorologists keep detailed records of weather conditions. In doing so, they will see the patterns of weather behavior that will help them to make forecasts. Technological advances have enabled meteorologists to improve the accuracy of their forecasts, but forecasts are never 100% accurate. Have teams refer to their weather reports and see that the data provided is the same type of data they will collect and record on Activity Sheet 2. Note that barometric pressures may or may not be given in your local paper. Discuss the forecast according to yesterday's newspaper weather report, and compare the forecast with today's actual weather. Ask students, how did yesterday's forecast compare to today's weather? Come to a consensus as a class. Explain that every day for the next 8 to 10 days, students will compare the previous day's forecast with the current day's weather. These comparisons will reveal the accuracy of the newspaper forecasts. Have students store Activity Sheet 2 at their team's weather station. Remind team members to bring in another weather report from a newspaper for the next activity. To conclude the activity, have teams return the weather stations to their designated areas. For science background, reinforcement activities, curriculum connections, and information about the Delta Science Reader, please consult your DSM Teacher's Guide.